things were working. But as a student or even as a working professional, it's really important to know like what is actually happening behind those codes, right? So instead of we just go and deploying to Heroku or render to make our application live, what we can do is like we can actually try to deploy that particular code by our own, by setting up the whole server and all these things, so that like like how these things are done behind those application firewalls, so that like when you are actually going to handle these things, what to do and when to do and how much compute you need to choose and how much RAM you need to choose and those things like that. Okay? So this session is going to completely focus on deploying a simple Node.js application on a server, and you can access that server from the outside world, right? It's not only the local host. You are going to deploy the application into a server. So we are going to see that from scratch, right? So before proceeding to the session, like a brief introduction about me. I'm Nayan Subramanian, a full stack developer with 4 years of experience building web and mobile application, right? So this is the agenda that we are going to cover. So first, I will be explaining you how an API request travels, right? So like when we open up our mobile or a web application and we load something, there is an HTTP request getting fired from our client, right? But more very few of us actually know like what's happening behind about how the request is getting traveled, what is happening, and how it is reaching to the server, and how it is actually getting to you back. We'll explain brief about like how an API request travels, and then we will start coding a simple Node.js application, and we will deploy it to a DigitalOcean. So DigitalOcean is one of the many cloud providers that we have right now. So we have others called like AWS, GCP, the Google Cloud Platform, and Microsoft Azure, right? So, but we are going to use DigitalOcean right now because it's simple and easy for you to understand, right? And then we will proceed with the Q&A, and then we will conclude the session. So, first, let's discuss like how an API request travels. Right? So, as we may know, like most of the applications that we use currently in our world, like even Facebook, Instagram, and everything operates on a HTTP request, right? So whenever you open up a application, enters your username and password and hit login, there is an HTTP request that is going to be fired from your client, which is your mobile or web, to the server, right? The server is going to accept that request and process like whether it's a valid username or whether it's a valid password, and if everything matches and everything good, it's going to send you a authentication token stating that okay, hey, this is a valid user and he or she can log in into the application, right? So the request first starts from your client, which is the browser and mobile app, right? And the backend URL, right? So the URL will not be directly linked to the server. So let's just say like you are going to hit google.com, right? So that particular google.com is called as a DNS, right? So this DNS will be mapped to a particular IP address because server a server cannot be named. So a server can only be identified using its IP address. Right? So whenever you hit google.com, what is actually happening is like this google.com is going to be mapped with the IP address. So first this will get resolved. We will first fetch the IP address that is mapped with the google.com, and then we will use that IP address to communicate to the server. Okay? So that is the text here called DNS colon IP and port. So once that actually passes, it will next go to the next layer, which is the firewall security layer, right? So we cannot allow every request into a server. We need to have a gatekeeping on our server to accept only the request that we need, right? Not the other users or other hackers that need to get access to our servers. Right? So we'll have firewall or security layer to do those kind of stuff, and this will filter out any unnecessary request or unnecessary load to our server, so that like our server will remain clean and will be more performant, right? And then it will go into our server. So server is basically a machine, right? So once it gets into the machine, there will be a web server that is running on the particular machine. So this can be an Nginx or Apache or other web servers. So what this web server does is like it connects a outside request, which is coming from the outside world, to a backend that is running inside that application. So this web server collects the request and it do some more cleanups and it passes the request to a backend code that is running on the particular server. Now it reaches the endpoint. So after this, the request is going to be resolved by our backend code and it's going to travel the way back from where it actually came. Right? So this is how most of the applications in the current world is operating. There are other protocols for the communication of client and server too. We have WebSockets and we have some other protocols too, but this is the majority one that most of the applications are using. So this is how an API request travels from the current applications. So before proceeding to the next slide, I just want you to know, like, if you have any doubts, you can actually ask me now. You can unmute your mic and speak. I have enabled the microphone access in the host controls. Or you can actually fire up your questions on the chat. That also fine. Okay. Let me proceed to the next part of the session. Right. So let's now build a simple API. Right. So let's fire up our code editor and let's first try to build up a simple Node.js application, and we'll see how that goes. Right? Putting up my terminal. Okay. Is it clear now? Okay. Great. So nice. So let me fire up my terminal, right? And I'll first create a simple Node backend folder. Right? And I'll initiate created a simple Node.js application. Oh, nice. So I'm going to open this in a code editor. Right? This is a simple backend. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to install some dependencies. Right? So I'm going to install Express. So Express is a HTTP management module which actually handles receiving HTTP requests. Right? So I've installed the Express package. I'm going to import it now. Of Express. Right. And now I'm going to declare a simple HTTP request handler which sends hello world. Right? And then I'm going to listen this request at the port of 3000. And what's it? Nice. So let me try to run this application now. So, for that we need to now we can see like our server is running on port number 3000, right? I'm just trying to hit this and it works. Right? So this is a simple HTTP request which actually sends hello world when you hit the root. Right? So now what we are actually going to do is to try to deploy this application to one of our services called DigitalOcean. Right? So what I will do is like I'll actually declare some more routes here to demonstrate the whole HTTP request simulation. Create protocol routes and let's say like task dot out of yes. Now I'm going to do this again. So there's no logic involved in the code that I'm writing. I'm just sending a basic response of to simulate like how an API will actually return the response, right? Yes, to create a post request. And then I'm going to create a batch request. These are the 5 types of requests most of the uh, companies use it. Right? Perfect. So what is happening? Okay, there is something important. Then I'm going to export this router. Right. I'm going to import this on the way here. Ask to task router. Right. Nice. So I'm going to link this. Okay. So the point is, if I hit API slash task, so I go here and hit API slash task. Okay. I need to restart the server. Doing some errors. me try it now. PM.
Hello.
Yes.
So can you please take the chat box?
Uh, yes. Give me a few minutes. I'll complete this and we'll answer your questions. Right? Yes. So I'll explain you like the code that I wrote, but you guys have some questions. Let's first answer that and come back to this. Can repeat the main context of today's class. The main context of today's class is to demonstrate you on how to deploy a simple Node.js application to a server without using any of the past products like Heroku and Render, right? So we are going to create a new server from scratch, and we are going to deploy our Node.js code, which I'm currently writing here, so that like it can be accessible to the outer world. That's the context of today's class. Right? So I'll answer the next question. When I try to install Node.js on my laptop, it shows an error. Windows service could not be accessed. This can occur if Windows installer is not currently installed. Contact the support. How can it be fixed? So TP Joy, right? So I need more data to help you on this. Like I'll share you my email ID. You can communicate with me on that, and we'll discuss on how to resolve it. Right? So just seeing this error, I cannot actually give you any solutions on top of my head. So I'll share it at the last, and you can contact me after this session. So we will get it resolved. Right? Nice. So do you guys have any other questions, or we can proceed with the session? Okay. Okay, I'll start explaining like what I did here. Right. So this is a simple Node.js backend code which actually accepts the incoming HTTP request and give you some data, right? So this does not communicate with the database or anything like that. So our main goal of this session is to deploy this Node.js code to the server, right? So I have written a simple HTTP request handlers for a route called task, right? So this task have 5 endpoints, 2 get endpoints, 1 post, 1 fast, and delete. So this get endpoint will return the list of tasks, right? And this endpoint will return a single task based on ID. So originally, what we have to do is like get this ID and query it from a database and send it back to you. But for simplicity, I have just returned the raw JSON here, hard coded JSON, right? And for a post, it will actually create a new post and send it back to you, right? Patches for edit and delete it for to delete the task. This too should also accept the ID here, right? So as you can see, like when we hit API/task, it is actually returning the correct code, right? And if I say API/task/1, it is giving me the JSON of the code that we have just declared here, task one description and the ID, right? So now what we are going to do is we are going to create a server on the DigitalOcean, and we'll try to deploy this right there. Right? So I'll first start opening my DigitalOcean account. right? So I'll first create a new project called demo, right? For demonstration of NodeJS deployments. Just choose uh, create a new project. Oh, no. And then we'll start creating a droplet. Right? So there are like so many possibilities. I mean, so many options to uh, deploy application. Right? So droplets are the basics. So droplets are something which will actually give you a VPS. So a VPS means like a virtual private server. So basically, it will give you a raw server with a terminal access, and we have to configure everything from scratch to deploy the application. Right? So I'm going to create a new droplet. Right. I'm going to leave this as it is. So basically, like I'll explain like what are the options that we have here, right? So one is region. So wherever you go, it's not only the digital ocean. Wherever you choose to create a new server, whether it's in AWS or Azure or Google Cloud Platform, it will ask you for a region, right? So this region defines like where your server is actually going to run. So if I say Bangalore, the server that I'm actually going to create will run in Bangalore, which means like the request inside India is going to be resolved much faster than the requests that are actually going to be rise from the other parts of the world, right? But let's say I choose New York now, then the latency is going to be increased, which means like if I try to log into an application, right, the speed of the login is going to differ from New York and Bangalore because we are hitting the login from the India, right? So this is the region basically defines like where your server is going to run, and this is the data center, right? So this is like a subcategory in New York, like in which data center your server is, you need the server to be run. Like in case of Bangalore, we have only one data center. In case of New York, we have like three data centers, right? So I'm going to choose Bangalore for now, right? And then this we will choose an image, which means like in which OS do we need our server to. We have multiple options here. We have Ubuntu, Fedora, Debian, CentOS, and others too, right? So I'm going to stick with Ubuntu right now, right? And then we are going to choose our what is it, server configuration, right? So the server actually starts from $4, and it can go up to like $96 if you are actually planning for a production level scale, right? So this $4 server have 512 MB of RAM, one virtual CPU, and 10 GB of storage and 500 GB of transfer, which means like this is the bare minimal configuration that we have. But I think this $4 server is enough for us to run our current code that we have just developed, right? I'm going to choose the basic $4 plan right now. And you have like other options as well, like premium Intel, premium AMD. So this has Intel uh, CPU, right? And this has an AMD CPU. Uh, we are going with the basic one, the $4 version right now, right? And by enabling backups, it will actually take automated backups for you, so that like if in case something got crashed or something like that, we can actually revert it back, right? So I'm just going to choose up a password here. This password is going to be used for us to log in into our application, right? So I'm just going to demo at 123. So the demo at 123, and okay, so character here. So this is going to be our password, right? Just going to have it here so that it doesn't look like of it. And I'm going to rename the droplet, but it's fine. Yeah, have it here. And then I'm going to create a droplet. So basically, what will happen now is like it will take all the configurations that we have given, and it will give us an access for a virtual private server. Basically, a server with only a terminal access. Right. So let's wait for like few minutes. Yes, it's up and running. What I'm going to do is I'm going to log into this particular server. So how am I going to do? I'm going to copy this IP address, right? And I'm going to go to my terminal and search root, and then it's going to ask us for a password. And I'm going to copy this password that I gave here and paste it. So now we are actually currently inside our server, right? So if I say PWD, it's currently on a root. So where we are currently is we have logged into the server that we have just created using SSH, right? So do you have any doubts until here? Do you guys want me to pause and explain some more aspects of it, or we are good to proceed? You can tell me your answers in the chat. That's also fine. Okay. Okay. That's great. So nice, man. Thanks for the acknowledgement. So what we are going to do now is like we need to get our code from our local, from my laptop to this server, right? So first we are going to push this code to a GitHub repository, right? I'll open up a new tab on my terminal, and I will initiate the Git here, right? Create the Git ignore. Right? Then I'm going to commit it, commit initial commit. Right? So now we need to create a GitHub repository. Right? I'm going to my GitHub account. Nice. I have logged into my GitHub account right now. I'm going to create a new repository called demo. Just a simple public repository. I'm creating it. Right? Add origin. I'm pushing the code to my repository. So we can see here like the code that we have just wrote is pushed into my demo repository, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this URL and go to my server, which is root at Ubuntu some name, and I'm going to clone it, right? I'm going to clone this repository, and it's cloned. You can see there is a folder called demo, right? So now we need to basically build the code, right? So do we have Node installed? No, because this is a fresh server, right? So what we need to do is like this is how it starts. So this is a fresh server. This doesn't have anything. This doesn't have Node installed, or this doesn't have any packages the web server installed. So we are going to do it from scratch. So just going to use the Google to install NVM first. So for those who don't know what is an NVM is basically a version manager, Node version manager, right? So we can use it to install different types of Node version. Right? I'm just going to install the VM first. Export it, path, right? Nice. And then I'm going to install Node.js 18. Why Node.js 18? No specific reasons. The one that I'm currently using on my local is Node.js 18, so I'm just going to proceed with the same. Right. So the current Node version I have is like Node.js 18 right now, and it's installed. right? So next thing we need to do is like, let's first try to fire up this server, right? I'm going to node, I'm going to npm start, okay? Because like you need to do npm install first, then install the package before running it, right? And then I'm trying to npm start, right? So it's up and running right now. So let's first try to connect with the server from our outside world, right? I'm going to copy this IP address and put 3000. And we can see here, like, it's not my local host, it's a server that we have just created, right? And putting colon 3000 actually gave me the response of hello world, right? Let's try API slash task and it gives us the right response. Yes, it gives you the right response. But we cannot keep this application running for entire time, which means like if I cut this, right, then this is not going to be ready. It's going to throw an error, unable to connect, right? So we need this the backend to run on a background, even when it's not actively running by an user, right? So to do that, we are going to install another package called PM2. Right? So PM2, what it does is like it takes an Node.js process, it takes a Node.js application and run it in the background, right? So that like it's not actively running, which needs a user to be monitored accordingly. It can run it in background and even when the user is not currently logged in, right? We have PM2 here, and I'm going to start the PM2 process, right? So get started, and if we do PM2 status, we can see like there is one process running, named index, and it is online. Right? If I want to see the logs, so I can PM2 logs and 0. So this is the log that we have on our application right now, right? So now if I actually close this, and let's say I have logged out of this shell access, right? So I return to my own machine terminal right now. Even if I do this, it's going to give me the correct output because like we have used PM2 to run our backend code in a background, right? So in no time, what we have just did is like we created a Node.js application, a backend. We created a server like for just $4, which means like 340 rupees per month, right? And we have spinned up our Node.js application on the server so that like you can access this URL from anywhere in the world so that like your backend APIs can be connected with any clients. Right? So that is all that I want you. I mean, I want to demonstrate to you guys for this session. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, we can proceed with the Q&As, and I'll be happy to answer those. You can unmute your mics if you want to talk. That also be perfectly fine. And if you are not comfortable, you can use the chat to ask the questions. Right. So please proceed. Come on, do you guys have any questions? Seriously.